My son-in-law didn't know I owned the company where he worked as CEO. For 3 years, Marcus Chen had been running Morrison Industries, a $2.3 billion conglomerate with operations across 12 countries, without any idea that his mother-in-law was the woman who signed his paychecks. He thought I was just Vivian, just his wife's mother, just a simple old woman who lived in a modest house, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and wore clothes from thrift stores. He had no idea that I had built Morrison Industries from a single warehouse in Charlotte 40 years ago, that I had grown it into an empire through decades of strategic acquisitions, calculated risks, and the kind of business acumen that most people can only dream of. He didn't know because I never told him, and I never told him because I wanted to see who he really was. When my daughter Adana first brought Marcus home, I had concerns. He was charming, too charming. He said all the right things, made all the right gestures, presented himself as the perfect potential husband. But I had spent 40 years in business. I had learned to read people, and something about Marcus Chen felt rehearsed. So I did what any careful mother would do. I tested him. I let him believe I was nobody. I let him see only the simple life I had chosen to live in my retirement. The small house, the old car, the ordinary existence of a woman who had supposedly worked as a secretary her entire life. And I watched. For 3 years, I watched how he treated me when he thought I had nothing to offer. For 3 years, I observed every dismissive glance, every condescending comment, every moment where his true character slipped through the polished facade. And now, sitting at a dinner table with his parents, watching them slide an envelope across the white tablecloth toward me, I was about to see exactly how far they would go. My name is Vivian Okafor Morrison. I am 67 years old. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, the daughter of a fisherman who taught me that the greatest wealth is not in what you own, but in what you understand about human nature. I came to America with nothing, $200 in my pocket and a dream that felt impossible. I worked as a cleaner, a factory worker, a warehouse assistant. I saved every penny, studied every night, and built something from absolutely nothing. Morrison Industries started as a small distribution company in 1984. Today, it employs over 15,000 people and generates $2.3 billion in annual revenue. I am one of the wealthiest women in the Southeast, and my son-in-law has spent 3 years treating me like an embarrassment he has to tolerate. Let me tell you about those 3 years. The first time I met Marcus was at a restaurant in Atlanta, a trendy place with small portions and prices that seemed designed to exclude ordinary people. Adana was nervous. She had been dating Marcus for 6 months and was clearly in love. She wanted me to approve. She wanted me to see what she saw. In him, I saw something different. Marcus shook my hand with the kind of grip men use when they're not really paying attention, firm enough to be polite, brief enough to signal that I wasn't worth his time. "So you're Adana's mother," he said, looking at my simple dress, my practical shoes, my complete lack of designer anything. "She's told me so much about you." "Has she?" "She said you worked as a secretary for many years. That must have been interesting work." The slight pause before interesting told me everything I needed to know. He had already categorized me, filed me away in the mental drawer labeled unimportant people I have to be polite to. "It was steady work," I said. "It paid the bills." "I'm sure it did." He turned to Adana, effectively dismissing me from the conversation, and spent the rest of dinner talking about his career, his ambitions, his plans to make a real impact in the business world. I listened, I observed, I said little, and I made a decision. I would not tell him who I was. I would let him show me who he was instead. The wedding was beautiful, paid for by Marcus's family, who made sure everyone knew they were covering the expenses for the less fortunate side of the family. I sat in the front row, wearing a dress I had bought at a consignment shop specifically for this occasion, and I watched as Marcus's mother, Patricia, looked at me with barely concealed disdain. "You must be so proud," Patricia said, taking the seat next to me. "Your daughter has done very well for herself." "I am proud of her." "Marcus comes from a very good family, you know. Old money. The Chens have been successful for generations." "I'm sure. It must be quite an adjustment for Adana, moving in such different circles than she's used to." I understood what she was really saying. Your daughter is lucky to have married up. She should be grateful. Adana has always been adaptable, I said simply. Patricia smiled, the smile of someone who believes they've won a competition the other person didn't know they were in. Yes, well, I'm sure she'll learn quickly. After the wedding, I watched Marcus's treatment of me evolve. At first, he was simply dismissive. He would greet me briefly at family gatherings, make minimal conversation, and then excuse himself to talk to more important people. But as months passed and I continued to present myself as a simple, uneducated woman with nothing to offer, his dismissiveness turned to condescension. He would explain things to me slowly, using small words, as if I couldn't possibly understand complex concepts. He would interrupt me mid-sentence, clearly uninterested in anything I might have to say. He would make jokes about the older generation and their inability to understand modern technology, looking at me pointedly. And he would complain to Adana, I heard him once, through a door I wasn't supposed to be near, about having to deal with me at family events. "Your mother is sweet," he said, "but she doesn't really fit in with our social circle. Maybe we could limit how often she comes to things where my colleagues will be present." Adana, to her credit, refused. "She's my mother. She goes where I go. I'm just saying, it's embarrassing sometimes. She doesn't know how to dress. She doesn't know how to make conversation with successful people. She raised me by herself after my father died. She worked 3 jobs to put me through school. I don't care if she doesn't fit your idea of successful." I was proud of my daughter in that moment, but I was also filing away another piece of evidence about the man she had married. What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been watching him at work too. Morrison Industries had a board of directors, a management structure, a CEO who reported to the chairman. On paper, the chairman was a man named Robert Harrison, a longtime friend and business partner who had agreed to serve as the public face of my ownership. In reality, every major decision went through me. I reviewed quarterly reports. I approved strategic initiatives. I monitored the performance of every executive, including the CEO who happened to be married to my daughter. Marcus was good at his job. I had to give him that. He was smart, strategic, and capable of making tough decisions when necessary. He had grown the company's revenue by 15% in his 3 years as CEO, but he was also arrogant. He took credit for his team's successes and deflected blame for his own failures. He surrounded himself with yes men who told him what he wanted to hear, and he had a tendency to dismiss ideas from anyone he considered beneath him, including, I learned, the suggestions that came from the chairman's office, suggestions that were actually mine. Another memo from Harrison, I overheard him tell his assistant once during a visit to the company under the pretense of seeing Adana for lunch. "I don't know why that old man thinks he understands modern business. Just file it." That old man was me, and I was keeping very careful notes. The dinner invitation came on a Tuesday. "Mom," Adana called, her voice carrying that particular tension I had learned to recognize over the years. "Marcus wants to have dinner with you. His parents will be there too." "Oh, what's the occasion?" "He says he wants to bring the families together, make things more comfortable." I could hear the doubt in her voice. After 3 years of marriage, Adana had started to see the cracks in Marcus's facade. She had witnessed how he treated me. She had argued with him about it, defended me, pushed back against his dismissiveness. But she loved him, and love makes people hope for change. "That sounds lovely," I said. "When?" "Saturday, 7 o'clock, at Le Bernardin." Le Bernardin, one of the most expensive restaurants in Atlanta, a place where a single meal could cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. They were trying to impress me. Or more likely, they were trying to establish their superiority in a setting where I would clearly be out of my depth. "I'll be there," I said. Saturday arrived. I dressed carefully for the dinner, not to impress, but to maintain my cover. I chose a dress from Goodwill, practical shoes, minimal jewelry. I looked exactly like what they expected. A simple old woman out of her league in a fancy restaurant. The Chen family was already seated when I arrived. Marcus and Adana on one side, his parents Richard and Patricia on the other. The empty seat at the head of the table was clearly meant for me, a position that would have been honored in most contexts, but which I suspected was designed to put me in the spotlight of their judgment. "Vivienne," Patricia's voice dripped with false warmth, "how wonderful that you could join us." Thank you for the invitation. I took my seat, noting how Richard's eyes swept over my outfit with barely concealed amusement. How Patricia's smile never quite reached her eyes. How Marcus looked vaguely uncomfortable, like a man who knew something unpleasant was about to happen but had convinced himself it was necessary. Only Adana looked genuinely happy to see me. You look lovely, Mom. Thank you, sweetheart. The first course arrived, an amuse-bouche of something unidentifiable but expensive. Richard ordered wine without consulting anyone, choosing a bottle that cost more than my monthly grocery budget when I was actually poor. Small talk filled the early part of the meal. How was my health? Was I finding ways to keep busy in retirement? Had I considered moving to a more appropriate living situation? Perhaps an assisted living facility where I could be around people my own age? Every question was designed to remind me of my place. I answered simply, briefly, giving them nothing to work with. And then, as the main course was cleared and dessert menus were distributed, Patricia exchanged a glance with her husband. Richard reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a white envelope. "Vivian," he said, sliding it across the table toward me, "we've been talking about the future, about what's best for everyone." I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "What's this? An opportunity?" Patricia's smile was sharp. "We know your financial situation isn't ideal. Living on a secretary's pension can't be easy, so we've put together a proposal." "A proposal?" $50,000. Richard said it like he was offering a fortune, like $50,000 was a number that should make me weep with gratitude. Enough to set you up comfortably, maybe buy a little condo somewhere warm, somewhere far from here. I stared at him. "You're offering me money to leave?" "We're offering you a fresh start." Patricia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a confidential murmur. "Let's be honest, Vivian. You don't fit in our world. You never will. Every time you come to one of our events, people ask questions. They wonder why Marcus's mother-in-law is so ordinary." "You're an embarrassment," Richard added, abandoning any pretense of tact. "To Marcus, to the Chen family name. We can't have people thinking our son married beneath him." "He didn't marry me. He married Adana." "Same thing. Your daughter is lovely and we've grown fond of her. But you?" Patricia shook her head. "You're a liability, and liabilities need to be managed." I looked at Adana. She was frozen, her face a mask of shock and horror. She hadn't known this was coming. She hadn't been part of their plan. "Adana," I said gently, "did you know about this?" "No." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, I swear, I had no idea." "Of course she didn't know," Marcus interrupted, speaking for the first time since the envelope appeared. "This was between my parents and me. We decided it was best to handle things discreetly." "You were part of this?" Adana turned to her husband, her voice rising. "You helped them. Planned to pay off my mother?" "Adana, calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down. This is my mother, and you're trying to, what, buy her off? Ship her away like she's some kind of problem to be solved?" "She is a problem." Marcus's voice hardened, the polished facade cracking. "Every time she shows up, I have to explain why my wife's mother looks like a cleaning lady. Every time she opens her mouth, I cringe. Do you know what it's like to have someone like her connected to my name?" "Someone like her raised me." "And you've risen above your circumstances, but she hasn't. She's still the same simple woman she's always been, and I'm tired of pretending that's acceptable." The table fell silent. I picked up the envelope. I could feel their anticipation. The Chens expecting me to take the money and disappear, Marcus waiting for his problem to be solved, Adana holding her breath. I opened the envelope and looked at the check inside. $50,000. Made out to Vivian Okafor. I set it on the table, and then I smiled. "I appreciate the gesture," I said, my voice calm, "but I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Richard frowned. "What's to misunderstand? We're offering you a generous sum to leave." Yes, I understood that part. I reached into my own purse, a worn leather bag I had bought at a garage sale, and pulled out my phone. "What you don't understand is who you're making this offer to." "We know exactly who you are," Patricia said. "A retired secretary with a pension and nothing else." Is that what Marcus told you? He told us you worked in an office for 40 years and never advanced beyond clerical work, that you have no assets, no savings, no... Marcus, I said, turning to my son-in-law, what is the name of the company where you work? He blinked, confused by the sudden change in direction. Morrison Industries. Why? And who owns Morrison Industries? It's a private company. The majority shareholder is someone named Morrison. I've never met them. The chairman handles all communication with the owner. Have you ever wondered why you've never met the owner? Why they've remained invisible for 3 years? Marcus's face shifted, the first flicker of something other than arrogance. What are you suggesting? I opened my phone and pulled up a document. Then I slid it across the table to him. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you, my name is Vivian Okafor Morrison. I founded Morrison Industries in 1984. I built it from a single warehouse into a $2.3 billion company. And for the past 3 years, I've been watching you run my company while treating me like I was worthless. Marcus stared at the document, a corporate filing listing me as the majority shareholder. The color drained from his face. That's not possible. It's entirely possible, and it's true. I turned to Richard and Patricia, who looked like they had been turned to stone. You offered me $50,000 to disappear. Let me put that in perspective for you. My net worth is approximately $780 million. Your generous offer is less than what I spend on charitable donations in a month. Patricia made a small sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. You wanted to know why Marcus's mother-in-law is so ordinary. I stood up, gathering my things. Now you know, I'm ordinary because I choose to be. Because I learned a long time ago that the way people treat you when they think you have nothing reveals everything about who they really are. I looked at Marcus. You've been a competent CEO, but you've also been arrogant, dismissive, and cruel, not just to me, but to anyone you consider beneath you. I've been receiving reports for 3 years. I know about the employees you've humiliated, the ideas you've stolen credit for, the yes men you've surrounded yourself with. I can explain. You don't need to explain. You need to listen. I picked up the check and tore it in half. Effective Monday morning. You're no longer CEO of Morrison Industries. Consider this your notice. You can't do this. I can do whatever I want. I own the company. I've owned it since before you were born. I turned to Adana, whose face was streaked with tears. Though whether from shock, grief, or something else, I couldn't tell. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, sweetheart. I never wanted to lie to you, but I needed to know what kind of man you had married. I needed to see if he would treat your mother with dignity when he thought there was nothing to gain from it. Mom, She couldn't finish the sentence. You have choices to make. I won't tell you what to do, but know that I love you and I will support you, whatever you decide. I walked toward the exit, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Marcus, your parents are right about one thing. Liabilities do need to be managed. Consider yourself managed. I walked out of the restaurant into the Atlanta evening, leaving behind the wreckage of their assumptions. 2 minutes. That's how long it had taken to destroy everything they thought they knew. 2 minutes to show them that the poor old woman they had tried to buy off was the one who held all the power. The aftermath was immediate and devastating. Marcus called me 17 times that night. I didn't answer. He showed up at my house the next morning, but I had already left for my actual home, a penthouse in Buckhead that I had owned for 15 years, a place none of them knew existed. On Monday morning, I walked into Morrison Industries for the first time in 3 years. The employees who recognized me from the old days were shocked. The ones who had only heard rumors about the mysterious owner were stunned. And Marcus, who had been escorted from the building by security an hour earlier, was nowhere to be seen. I called an emergency board meeting. For the past 3 years, I told them, I've been conducting a test. I wanted to see how our company operated under leadership that didn't know it was being watched. I wanted to see if our culture of excellence was genuine or performative. I paused, looking around the room. What I found was a CEO who was competent at growing revenue but corrosive to our workplace culture, a leader who took credit for others' work, who dismissed ideas from people he considered inferior, who surrounded himself with sycophants rather than truth-tellers. Mrs. Morrison, one of the board members said, Marcus Chen grew our revenue by 15%, and our employee satisfaction scores dropped by 22%. Our voluntary turnover increased by 40%. 3 promising executives left for competitors, citing leadership culture as their reason for leaving. I slid a folder across the table. I've been tracking everything. The numbers tell a story that our revenue reports don't. The board reviewed the data in silence. What do you recommend? The chairman asked. Marcus Chen is already terminated. I want to promote Sarah Williams. From VP of Operations to CEO. She's been the one actually driving our innovation for the past 2 years, while Marcus took credit for her work. It's time she got the recognition she deserves. The board voted unanimously in favor. Sarah Williams became one of the youngest female CEOs in our industry, and Marcus Chen became a cautionary tale about the dangers of judging people by their appearance. Adana came to see me a week later. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, her usual vibrant energy dimmed by days of difficult conversations and harder decisions. I filed for divorce, she said, sitting across from me in my penthouse living room, this morning. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Are you? You're the one who set all this in motion. I considered my response carefully. I'm sorry that your marriage ended. I'm not sorry that you learned the truth about who you married. Did you always know? From the beginning? I suspected. The first time I met him, something felt wrong. But suspicion isn't certainty. I needed to see how he would behave over time, when he thought there were no consequences for his treatment of me. So I was married to a test subject for 3 years? You were married to a man who showed you exactly who he was. The fact that he didn't know he was being observed just meant his true character was visible. Adana was quiet for a long moment. I loved him. I know. I thought he was different when we were alone, kinder, more genuine. Maybe he was, with you. But the way someone treats people they consider powerless reveals their true character. Marcus was kind to you because you were valuable to him. He was cruel to me because he thought I wasn't. What about his parents? What happens to them? Nothing from me. They're not my responsibility, but Richard Chen's company does a significant amount of business with Morrison Industries, contracts that are up for renewal next quarter. You're going to cut them off. I'm going to let them compete fairly for those contracts, which given their company's performance metrics means they'll probably lose to better qualified competitors. That's not nothing. No, it's consequences. There's a difference. Adana stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. I wish you had told me from the beginning. I wish I had known who you really were. Would it have changed anything? She thought about it. Maybe. Maybe I would have watched Marcus more carefully. Maybe I would have seen the warning signs earlier. Or maybe you would have second-guessed yourself constantly, wondering if his affection was genuine or if he was just playing a part because he knew your mother was wealthy. So you protected me by lying. I protected you by letting you make your own choices with the same information he had. You chose Marcus believing you were equals. He chose you believing he was marrying down. The inequality in that dynamic would have revealed itself. Eventually, I just made sure it happened before you had children, before you were more deeply entangled. Adana turned to face me. I'm angry at you. I know. I might be angry for a long time. I understand. But I also... She paused, struggling with the words. I also know you did this because you love me, in your complicated, strategic, Vivienne Okafor way. I did it because no one protected me when I was young. I married a man who treated me like a possession, who saw my worth only in what I could provide. I spent years in that marriage before I found the courage to leave. I didn't want that for you. You've never talked about my father. Because there's little worth saying. He was a lesson I learned the hard way. You were the only good thing that came from that marriage. We stood in silence, mother and daughter, separated by secrets and connected by something deeper than secrets could touch. What happens now? Adana asked. "Now you decide who you want to be. You're welcome to come work at Morrison Industries if you want. You're more than qualified, or you can pursue your own path. I'll support you either way. And if I need time, just to process everything, then take time. I'm not going anywhere." She crossed the room and hugged me, the first real embrace we had shared in years. "I love you, Mom, even when you're being manipulative and secretive." "I love you too, sweetheart, even when you're being stubborn and too trusting." "I get that from you." "The stubbornness, yes. The trust, you'll have to work on." She laughed, a small, broken sound, but a laugh nonetheless. It was a beginning. 6 months later, Adana joined Morrison Industries as Director of Strategic Development. She was good at the job, better than good. She had inherited my instincts for business, my ability to see opportunities others missed, my talent for building relationships that lasted. She also started seeing a therapist, processing the trauma of her marriage and the revelation about my identity. It was hard work, and some days were harder than others, but she was healing, and our relationship was healing too. We had dinner together every Sunday now, not at fancy restaurants where appearances mattered, but at my kitchen table, where we could be ourselves. "I've been thinking," she said one Sunday, pushing pasta around her plate, "about why you lived so simply all those years, even before Marcus. You've always driven old cars, worn ordinary clothes, lived in that little house. And? At first I thought it was about the test, about seeing how people would treat you. But it's more than that, isn't it?" I set down my fork. When I first came to this country, I had nothing. I cleaned toilets, worked in factories, saved every penny, and I was happy, not because I was poor, but because I was building something. Every dollar I saved was a step toward my dream. And then you succeeded. Spectacularly, beyond anything I had imagined. And for a while, I enjoyed the fruits of that success. The nice house, the expensive car, the designer clothes. But it felt empty. I was surrounded by people who only saw my money, who treated me differently because of what I had rather than who I was. "So you gave it up?" "I gave up the appearances. I kept the substance. I still own everything I built. I just don't display it. And that choice gave me something more valuable than any luxury could provide." "What's that?" "The ability to see people clearly. When you're visibly wealthy, everyone performs for you. When you're visibly ordinary, people show you who they really are." Adana considered this. "That's why you didn't tell Marcus, or me. I told you what you needed to know, that I loved you, that I was proud of you, that I would always support you. The rest was just context. Billions of dollars of context. Money is a tool, Adana. It's useful for building things, for solving problems, for creating opportunities. But it's not who I am. I am who I am, regardless of what's in my bank account. The simple house and the old car just help other people see that too, or help them reveal themselves when they can't see it. That too." She raised her glass. "To complicated mothers and their complicated lessons." I raised mine. "To daughters who are smart enough to learn them." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in years, I felt like my daughter truly saw me. Not the poor widow she had believed in, not the hidden billionaire she had discovered, just me. Vivian, her mother. That was worth more than any empire I had ever built. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever tested someone by showing them a version of yourself they didn't expect. Like and subscribe for more stories about wisdom, patience, and the power of seeing people for who they truly are. We know exactly who you are, a retired secretary with nothing. That's what they said when they slid the envelope across the table. $50,000 to disappear, to stop embarrassing their son, to remove myself from their world. I picked up the envelope. I looked at the check inside, and I smiled. There's been a misunderstanding. My name is Vivian Okafor Morrison. I founded Morrison Industries in 1984. I built it into a $2.3 billion company. And for 3 years, I watched my son-in-law run my company while treating me like I was worthless. The check they offered? $50,000. My net worth? $780 million. I tore the check in half. Effective Monday, you're no longer CEO. Their faces went pale. 2 minutes. 2 minutes to destroy everything they thought they knew. 2 minutes to show them that the poor old woman they tried to buy off owned everything they valued. Liabilities need to be managed, they had said. They were right. I just managed theirs.